doesn't exist until it cracks apart. Time doesn't exist until it cracks apart. Time doesn't exist until it cracks apart. You were pretty at night. Time doesn't exist until it cracks apart. You were pretty at night. Slew the white-haired one first. You were pretty at night. Slew the white-haired one first.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of It's Time to Rewind, the podcast trapped in its own time loop right along with the movies we discuss. This season is the Serial Bombio, and we're looking at Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, and we've moved on to Angel Season 5, Episode 19, Time Bomb. Today we're discussing the fifth loop in the episode, starting at 29 minutes and 41 seconds, with Illyria gasping in pain, and ends at 29 minutes and 59 seconds, with Illyria gasping in pain again. Joining me today is the host of Con Air, the podcast, Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, and Lampardy, the podcast, Jay Cluitt. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you, Bubba. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. It's always a pleasure. So this is, before we get into today's loop, I am kind of curious because I heard a little bit about this before you signed up, but what is your history with Buffy and Angel as a series?
Okay, so I have listened to all of your coverage on Buffy and Angel so far, and I think I'm the least qualified person to be here. Because I have seen every episode of Buffy and Angel one time, apart from this episode of Angel, which is the only one I've seen twice. So again, in preparation for this show. Growing up, I watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Clarissa Explains It All, and other shows with Melissa Joan Hart. I don't know. And my sister,
I was a fan. I was a fan of Clarissa whenever I was growing up, but I did not watch Sabrina until much later because my wife got into that late. I think she watched it growing up, and then she watched it again, now as an adult, and I did not care for it. It was too cheesy for me.
Yeah, I mean, I was a child, so it was kind of a kid's show, I think. But I have an older sister who found out that I watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and she was like, "You shouldn't watch that show. That show's for girls. So it's about a girl. There's a girl's name in it." So I kind of like, "Oh, there's something wrong. I must stop doing this." Because I'm like an impressionable 12, however old I was then. So I didn't watch it, and then anything that had like a girl's name in it, I assumed wasn't for me. So I didn't even think I was allowed to watch Buffy, let alone that I should. And this obviously I grew out of this at some point, but then Buffy had ended, Angel had gone. But my wife and she watched it a lot growing up, and we introduced TV shows to each other, and we just binged the entire thing. So I showed her The West Wing, and we finished The West Wing. We both loved The West Wing. She was like, "Oh, we can watch Buffy next." I'm like, "Okay, there can't be too many episodes of that." And then 12 seasons later, I really liked it. I did start documenting it a little bit over on my blog and on Twitter. I kind of held off doing an episode by episode tweet about each one. But yeah, so I watched them all fairly recently for the first time. It's my history with Buffy. And we tried to do it in the correct kind of timeline with when Angel started coming out, trying to do like an episode of Buffy here, Angel, Buffy, well, going by the timeline, but I couldn't find out the exact timeline of how they were released in conjunction with each other, so I just kind of gave up on that. We did series by series, season by season in the end.
Yeah. My first guest, Ian, from Slayerfest '98, he mentioned that they had wrapped up season 1 of Angel, and they mentioned in their wrap-up episode that they felt that it's a much better binge option to watch them as separate entities instead of trying to bounce back and forth between each other, because they are such different tones.
Yes.
That it's harder to get into Angel if you're like swapping back and forth, because for the most part Buffy is much lighter and Angel is more serious and dour.
Yeah, but the crossover, this like semi-crossovers don't help. So at the end of season 4 of Buffy, when she dies, that's season 4, yeah. You have the spoiler as an episode of Angel where Willow shows up and like in tears, and then they don't say, "Oh, Buffy died," but it's implied, I think. So we saw that before the episode where Buffy died. So that kind of spoils things a little bit, but it's a show that's 20 years old at this point, so who cares? It didn't ruin
And
things
then
too much.
season 6/season 4 of Angel, they had the one episode where after she came back to life that she went and met Angel, but at that point they were on different networks, so they weren't really allowed to do any official crossovers. So they just
that was weird watching that, because I did kind of think, oh, they met, but we didn't see it. That must be in the other season. We'll see it in that one. Oh no, we didn't see that one. Huh? Where did they meet? Yeah, that was odd.
that was interesting. But I suppose we should get to today's loop, and this is a section where the loops are getting shorter and quicker, and this is really the kind of the last one before things change, and this is almost beat for beat exactly what we saw earlier in the episode with Illyria, having the Planet of the Apes reference, which I love. Illyria calling Angel an ape and pushing up against the wall, and then Angel saying, "Get your damn hands off me."
Yeah. There's a lot of metaphors and references that are all over the place in this episode. I did think there was like an aquatic thing going on for a while, which is something I always pick up on, because, as you mentioned, I deeply see the podcast is something I do. So I'm always focusing on like mentioning of water and things. And you had Gunn mentioning in the first go around going all Poseidon on him, like flipping his world upside down, which I've just watched and did an episode of the Poseidon Adventure, so that was nice. And I kind of laughed when that happened. I was watching this with my wife, and she's like, "Wait, are you watching this for Deep Blue Sea because of that one line?" I'm like, no, this is for another podcast. So you have that, and then you have her like plankton envying the ocean that holds it, which I think is a repeated line earlier in the episode. But then like the Planet of the Apes, it goes all over the place in terms of metaphors in future loops that we'll get to then. But yeah, she is all over the place in terms of her references.
Yeah, and this, I feel like this does explain in this shot, because this is different, because the first time that we saw this, after they had that interaction and she says, "What are you doing to me?" Then she lets him down, and then she says, "You don't know, not yet, it's too early," and then walks off. And this time, instead of her doing that, it gives her another, time cramp.
That's a perfect description of what it is. It's a time cramp. Yeah, I love that. Also, I like the blue guy in the background. So what's going on here? Which I feel like must happen to everyone every day in Wolfram and Hart. There's no normal day in this place.
Yeah, although I will say that this does explain, because I noticed it the first time around, but it was kind of small enough that I didn't bring it up. But now, whenever I'm just focusing on these 18 seconds, like whenever the camera cuts to her close up and her saying, "What have you done to me?" I always thought that looked weird. It definitely looks like it was shot on a different day.
Or maybe even a green screen?
Yeah.
There's a weird kind of shimmer around her. I think that one, that's not a two-shot. That's Angel. David Boreanaz was not there when they did that.
No, and I do think that maybe it was like a green screen shot, because it's like set up for the blurring of the background.
Yeah, makes sense. I do feel sorry for Amy Acker for this season, because like she's gone from playing a human who looks like a human to having to spend an extra 3 hours in makeup every day for this second half of the season. She's phenomenal, isn't it? But I don't know if it was her choice or Joss Whedon's choice. Like, okay, do you like blinking? Because she's not allowed to do it anymore. Which just sucks. She's fantastic here. I think she's great in this character, being so different from Fred.
Yeah, she does look great, but yeah, I feel for her in those, like, the sclera contact lenses.
Oh, they look so thick. Horrible. Like, I hate wearing normal contact lenses, let alone these things that, like, half an inch thick, wherever they are.
And then really pretty much the only other note that I have for this is it does feel like they do a good job of showing the progression of each of these trips through time. They feel like they're getting more painful as the episode goes on.
Yeah, the time cramp intensifies.
Yeah, she's about to, give birth to her blue sparkles.
She's in time labor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But other than that, I this is 90% a scene that we already covered. But do you have anything else to say for this short little 18 seconds here?
For these 18 seconds, no, I do not. I think that's about it. We'll get to more things later in the loops, I think.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up this episode then. Thanks again for joining me. And why don't you go ahead and take a moment to let everybody else know where they can find you online.
I'll do a different plug each time. So I've already mentioned Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, where myself and my co-host Mark Hoffmeyer, we went through the entire Deep Blue Sea trilogy, one DVD chapter at a time. We're now looking at Deep Blue Sea adjacent films. So that's films featuring sharks or directed by Rennie Harlin or lots of aquatic action. So Poseidon Adventure and Beyond the Poseidon Adventure are two of our more recent episodes. Bubba was on 2 years ago at this point for Aquaman, I think. Or was it last year? Time means nothing anymore. Bubba was on for an Aquaman episode.
Yeah, technically 2 years ago. I think it was like December of 21.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. And if Aquaman 2 ever happens, I don't know what's going on there.
I think it's
much better to see, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of promos for it or any real trailers for it, but I'm pretty sure it is still coming out because I think they're finished, like they're more finished than they were with Batgirl.
Batgirl, yeah.
So they're not going to tax right off that one too.
There'll be an Aquaman 2 still swimming episode at some point, I'm sure. But for now, Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, is where we cover lots of Deep Blue Sea adjacent films. A term that didn't exist before that podcast.
And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me on Twitter where I'm at Bubbawheat. And you can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on Anchor.fm, as well as anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. We also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to discuss episodes as they come out, or have discussions on any upcoming or previous time loop movies, TV shows, episodes. Anything there is welcome. So until next time, grrr.
Arg.
Time doesn't exist until it cracks apart. Time doesn't exist until it cracks apart. Time doesn't exist until you were pretty at night. Time doesn't exist until it cracks apart. You were pretty at night. Slew the white-haired one first. You were pretty at night. Slew the white-haired one first.